Marcus sat on the cold, cracked pavement, his back resting against the rough brick wall of an abandoned building. The city hummed around him, the sound of cars rushing by, distant horns blaring, and people talking and laughing in places where he could not afford to go. He hugged his tattered coat tighter around his thin frame, shivering slightly from the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. He had lived on the streets for many years, and yet every day felt like a new struggle, a test of endurance, patience, and courage. Despite all the hardships, Marcus carried himself with a quiet dignity. There was something about the way he held his head, even when his stomach growled from hunger, that showed he had not given up entirely. Some days, he found food in small kindnesses from strangers, or from the generosity of people who tossed coins into his worn cup. Other days, he went hungry, wandering the city streets and alleys, searching for scraps, leftovers, or even the warmth of the sun. Marcus did not ask for much. He wanted only to survive, to keep his spirit intact, and, if possible, to do some good in the world, even if it seemed invisible to others. On this particular afternoon, the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the busy streets. Marcus had decided to take a different route than usual, a winding path that led him past a small park filled with children's laughter and the bright colors of playground equipment. For a brief moment, he paused and allowed himself a tiny smile. The sound of children playing reminded him of something he had lost long ago, a family, perhaps, or the innocence of a life untouched by hardship. He shook the thought from his head. Nostalgia was dangerous. It reminded him of what he did not have and what he could no longer reclaim. As he walked along the edge of the park, his attention was caught by a sudden commotion near the swings. A small boy, no older than 8, was surrounded by a group of older children. They pushed him lightly at first, teasing him, laughing cruelly at his protests. Marcus could see the boy's face turn red, his small fists clenching as he tried to fend off the bullies. The boy's eyes darted around, looking for someone to help, anyone, but the playground seemed full of people too busy to notice. Marcus's heart tightened. He could not stand by and watch a child be treated this way. Without thinking, he stepped forward, his long coat brushing against the grass, his tall frame suddenly towering over the group. The older children stopped, startled by his presence. Marcus's eyes, dark and steady, met theirs with a calm, unyielding intensity. "Leave him alone," Marcus said, his voice low but firm, carrying across the small park now. The bullies exchanged nervous glances. They had not expected an adult to intervene, certainly not one who looked like he had seen the world and survived its harshest trials. Marcus did not raise his voice, did not threaten with fists or anger. His presence alone was enough to make them hesitate. The youngest of the bullies stepped forward, trying to act brave. "Mind your business, man," he sneered. Marcus took a slow step closer, his shadow falling across the children. "I said leave him alone," he repeated. There was a quiet strength in his tone, one that brooked no argument. The older kids began to retreat, sensing that this was not a situation they could control. One by one, they shuffled away, muttering under their breath but too afraid to challenge him further. The small boy looked up at Marcus, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. Thank you," he stammered, his voice trembling. I didn't know what to do." Marcus knelt down to be closer to the boy's height, his face softening into a kind smile. "It's okay. You don't have to face bullies alone. Never be afraid to ask for help." He paused, studying the boy. "Are you hurt anywhere?" The boy shook his head quickly. "No, just scared." "Good," Marcus said gently. "Scared is normal. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about what you do even when you are scared." The boy's lips curled into a small smile, the first one that day that seemed genuine. "I'm Ethan," he said, offering a hand. Marcus took it, shaking it firmly but carefully, mindful of the boy's small size. "Marcus," he replied simply. There was no need for more. Words were not always necessary. The moment spoke for itself, a connection between two people who came from very different worlds, but who shared a brief, meaningful encounter. Ethan's eyes darted around the playground, still wary. "They might come back," he whispered. Marcus nodded, still calm. "If they do, I'll be here. But remember, you're stronger than you think. Bullies only have power if you let them." Ethan's gaze lingered on Marcus, studying him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Do you live around here?" he asked hesitantly. Marcus hesitated. He did not want to explain his situation in detail, it was private, and besides, he did not feel the need to reveal it to a child. "I live where I need to," he said with a small shrug. He kept his voice steady, not wanting to make Ethan uncomfortable. Ethan nodded slowly, as if he understood, though he did not fully. "My dad will be so worried. He told me not to wander too far from the house." Marcus's eyebrows raised slightly. He sensed there was more to this boy than met the eye. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, even in fear, and there was something in his voice, a tone of respect, that was unusual for a child his age. "Where's your house?" Marcus asked gently. Ethan hesitated, then pointed down a tree-lined street. "Just down there, past the bakery." Marcus considered. He had learned over the years that it was rarely wise to get too involved in other people's lives. Yet something about Ethan tugged at him. The boy had been brave, standing up for himself in the face of bullies, and Marcus could not turn his back on him now. "I can walk you home," he said finally. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. "You, really will?" Marcus nodded. "Yes. I'll make sure you get there safe." As they walked together through the park and onto the quiet street, Marcus noticed the contrast between the world he inhabited and the world Ethan seemed to belong to. The houses were neat, the gardens carefully tended, and there was a sense of order and safety that Marcus had not felt in years. He could not help but feel a twinge of longing, a reminder of the life that might have been his if circumstances had been different. Ethan chatted nervously about school, his friends, and his favorite games, and Marcus listened, offering quiet encouragement and small insights here and there. Despite the differences in their lives, Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying the boy's company. There was an innocence to Ethan, a lightness that reminded Marcus of hope. When they reached Ethan's house, a well-kept two-story home with white trim and a small garden, Marcus stopped at the gate. Ethan turned to him, eyes shining. "Thank you, Marcus. Really? You saved me today." Marcus smiled, trying to make his voice sound casual. "It was nothing. Just doing the right thing." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then stepped closer. "I want my dad to know." "Can you meet him?" Marcus froze slightly. Meeting a child's parent could complicate things. He was used to remaining invisible, avoiding attention. But he looked at Ethan's eager face, full of gratitude and trust, and something inside him softened. "All right," he said finally. "Lead the way." As they approached the front door, Marcus felt a flicker of anticipation he had not felt in a long time. He had no idea who this boy's father was, but something told him that this encounter might change more than just Ethan's day. He took a deep breath and followed Ethan inside, stepping into a world that was very different from the one he knew and wondering what surprises lay ahead. Marcus followed Ethan through the small hallway of the house, noticing how tidy and bright everything looked. The floors were polished, the walls decorated with family photos, and there was a faint smell of baked bread in the air. It was a world so different from the streets he had known for so long that it almost made him pause. Yet, he kept walking, his expression calm, hiding the mixture of curiosity and unease growing inside him. Ethan stopped at the living room door and turned to Marcus. "Dad. Dad. Come here. You have to meet someone." A man appeared from another room, tall, with neatly combed hair and dressed in a clean, pressed shirt. His face brightened when he saw his son, but then he paused, looking carefully at the stranger behind him. There was a brief moment of hesitation, a subtle tension in the way he held himself. "Ethan, who is this?" the man asked gently but with a tone of caution. "This is Marcus," Ethan said quickly, almost proudly. "He saved me today from the bullies in the park. He's really nice, Dad. You have to meet him." Marcus extended his hand politely. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Marcus. I just helped your son today. That's all." The man studied Marcus for a long moment. There was something familiar in his face, a spark of recognition that Marcus felt deep in his chest. He knew that look, that careful assessment, the way people sometimes remembered faces from the past. Marcus straightened, meeting the man's gaze evenly, unsure if he wanted this recognition or not. "I see," the man said finally, his voice polite but guarded. "Well, thank you for helping my son. I'm David Thompson." Marcus froze for a heartbeat. David Thompson. The name carried memories, sharp and unwelcome, of a life that had once been different. Years ago, he had known this man not as a friend, but as someone with power over him. Someone whose choices had indirectly shaped Marcus's path to the streets. A flicker of old emotions stirred anger, disbelief, and confusion. For a moment, Marcus said nothing. He looked at David Thompson, and then at Ethan, who was watching both men with innocent curiosity. He reminded himself to stay calm. This was not the time to bring up the past, not yet. But inside, a storm of emotions was quietly building. Ethan, sensing the tension, tugged gently on Marcus's sleeve. "He's really nice, Dad. Please don't be mad at him," the boy said softly. Marcus crouched down slightly to Ethan's level and smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, Ethan. Everything's fine. I'm just here to make sure you're safe." David Thompson's eyes softened as he looked at his son. "I understand, Ethan. And I'm grateful that you were protected." He turned back to Marcus. "It's not every day that someone steps in like this. You have my thanks." Marcus nodded politely, though his mind was racing. He remembered the times he had worked hard, trusted people, and been let down by David's decisions in the past. Those decisions had led him to a life on the streets. And now here he was, standing in front of the very man who had once held a part of his future in his hands. "Can we sit for a moment?" David asked, gesturing toward the living room. "I'd like to hear the story of how this happened." Marcus hesitated. Normally, he avoided social situations, especially with strangers. But Ethan's eyes were bright, expectant, full of trust. He could not refuse the child. "All right," Marcus said finally, following David into the living room. The room was warm and quiet, a sharp contrast to the noise and chaos of the city streets. Marcus sat on the edge of a sofa while Ethan plopped onto the floor near him. David remained standing for a moment, as if unsure where to place himself, then finally sat in a chair opposite Marcus. "So," David began, his tone careful, "tell me what happened in the park." Marcus described the events simply, explaining how he had seen Ethan being harassed by older kids and stepped in to protect him. He spoke honestly, but without unnecessary details about his own life. He focused on the child, on the moment, on the courage it had taken for Ethan to face the bullies. Ethan nodded, occasionally chiming in to add small details: how scared he had been, how Marcus had scared the bullies away with just his presence. Marcus noticed the pride in Ethan's voice, and it warmed him. Children often saw the world in simple, clear ways. Their trust and admiration were pure, unaffected by history or status. David listened quietly, nodding slowly. Then he said something that made Marcus's chest tighten. "You remind me of someone I once knew a long time ago, someone who worked hard, who had dreams, and yet, life turned out differently than it should have. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He kept his voice calm, but inside, a wave of memories threatened to surface. "I'm not sure what you mean," he said cautiously. David leaned back slightly, his fingers steepled together. "It's been many years. I was young, making choices without fully understanding their consequences. People's lives, lives like yours, Marcus, were affected. I I wish things had turned out differently." The name, the voice, the look in David's eyes, it was undeniable. Marcus felt a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. This was the man from his past. The man whose decisions had contributed to Marcus losing his home, losing his job, and losing his chance at a normal life. And yet, he was here now, expressing regret. Marcus wanted to speak, to demand answers, to express all the frustration he had carried for years. But he looked at Ethan, sitting on the floor, his small hands folded neatly in his lap, watching both of them with wide eyes. Marcus realized that anger could wait. For now, this was about the child, about the moment, about doing what was right. Instead, he simply nodded. "People make mistakes," Marcus said carefully. "We all do. What matters is what we do next." David's expression softened. "You are right. And seeing you here, helping Ethan, it reminds me of what truly matters. I have been thinking about my actions for a long time. And perhaps now, it is time to make amends." Marcus took a slow breath, letting the words settle. He had not expected closure today, not in this way. But life had a way of surprising him. Here, in this well-kept living room, he was faced with a past he had carried alone for many years. And now, there was an opportunity, however uncertain, to move forward. Ethan, oblivious to the tension between the two men, spoke up eagerly. "Dad, can Marcus come over sometimes? He can play with me, and maybe he can teach me how to stand up for myself." Marcus laughed softly, the sound warm and genuine. "I suppose I could do that," he said. "But only if you promise to keep learning and being brave." David smiled, watching his son's excitement. "That sounds reasonable. Marcus, I hope we can build a better connection from here. For Ethan's sake, at least." Marcus nodded again. For Ethan's sake. There was a moment of quiet as the three of them sat together. Marcus looked around the room, seeing the contrast between this life and the streets he knew. He did not feel envy, only a strange mixture of curiosity and cautious hope. Perhaps this encounter, this small act of courage, was the start of something unexpected. For the first time in a long time, Marcus allowed himself a small spark of optimism. Maybe life could surprise him yet. Maybe, just maybe, he could help someone and, in turn, be part of something larger than himself, even if only in small ways. As the sun dipped lower outside, casting a warm glow through the living room windows, Marcus realized that today had changed more than just Ethan's afternoon. It had changed his own perspective as well. There was still a long road ahead, but perhaps it was a road that did not have to be walked alone. Marcus sat quietly in the living room, his eyes fixed on the floor, though his mind was racing faster than it had in years. Memories he had buried deep beneath the hardships of the streets were rising to the surface, vivid and unrelenting. He remembered a time long ago when he had a steady job, a small apartment, and dreams of building a better life. He remembered the trust he had placed in people, the hard work he had done, and the moments when he had believed that life would treat him fairly. And then he remembered David Thompson not as a friend, but as someone whose decisions had shaped the course of his life. At the time, Marcus had been employed at a construction company, working tirelessly to support himself and a small family he once hoped to have. David, the young manager, had seemed respectable, fair, and encouraging. But behind the smiles and handshakes, Marcus now recalled the choices that had betrayed him. A project gone wrong, a missed promotion, a misunderstanding that was blown out of proportion, and suddenly, Marcus found himself without work, without support, and alone. It had been the beginning of a downward spiral that ended with him on the streets. Marcus clenched his fist slightly, feeling the familiar sting of old wounds. And yet, he had learned to survive, to rise every day no matter how heavy the weight of despair pressed on him. He had learned to rely on himself, to protect the innocent when he could, and to never lose his integrity, even when life had seemed determined to strip it away. David Thompson broke the silence. "Marcus, I can see the past has been difficult for you. And I have thought about it often, wondered if there was something I could have done differently. If only I had known how much my actions would affect someone like you." Marcus looked up slowly, meeting David's gaze. There was sincerity in his eyes, a trace of guilt that could not be hidden. Marcus's own emotions wavered. Part of him wanted to speak out, to release all the years of frustration, anger, and betrayal. Another part of him wanted to remain calm, to assess carefully before opening old wounds. "It wasn't easy," Marcus said finally, his voice measured. "I trusted people, worked hard, and believed in fairness. And then, things changed. I lost everything. And I ended up here, on the streets, fighting to survive every day." David's face tightened with regret. "I know. I know it must have been terrible. And I wish I could undo it. I truly do. At the time, I thought I was making the right choices. I didn't realize the consequences, not for you, not for anyone. I was blind in my own ambition." Marcus let the words sink in. He wanted to feel anger, and in a way, he did. But beneath that anger, there was also understanding. Life was full of mistakes, and sometimes even those in power could act without knowing the harm they caused. "Life moves on," Marcus said quietly. "It doesn't wait for anyone to heal or forgive. You did what you did, and I had to survive. I still do. But right now, what matters is this boy." He gestured toward Ethan, who was still watching them from the floor, unaware of the tension filling the room. David followed his gaze, and for the first time, he truly looked at his son. Ethan was small, bright-eyed, and full of curiosity, but there was also a spark of courage in him, a spark that had drawn Marcus to protect him earlier. David realized that Ethan's safety and happiness could not be compromised by the mistakes of the past. "Marcus, you're right," David said softly. "This is about Ethan. And I see that you're a good man. Brave, honest, someone who cares. I underestimated you, and I let the past blind me to what truly matters. I want to make it right." Marcus nodded slowly. He did not need an apology to continue living his life, but he appreciated the gesture. It showed growth, humility, and a willingness to face the consequences of one's choices. Ethan, sensing that the conversation had reached a pause, spoke up. "Dad, Marcus can teach me so much. I want him to stay and help me learn. Please." David smiled faintly, watching the bond forming between his son and Marcus. "I see that. And I won't interfere with that. If you're willing, Marcus, perhaps you could visit more often. For Ethan's sake." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. Here was an opportunity, not for wealth, not for comfort, but for connection, for purpose. He could guide this child, help him grow, and in doing so, perhaps heal a part of himself that had been broken long ago. "I'll visit," Marcus said finally. "But only if I can teach him the right lessons. Courage, honesty, and respect. The things that really matter in life." David nodded. Then it settled. For the next few minutes, the three of them sat in quiet reflection. Marcus looked around the room, noticing the photographs of family vacations, school events, and birthdays. It was a world so different from the streets he knew, yet he felt a strange sense of peace being there. He realized that life could be unfair, but it could also surprise him with moments of kindness, trust, and purpose. David spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "Marcus, I want to ask, how did you survive all these years on the streets? Most people wouldn't make it as long as you have." Marcus smiled faintly, though there was a shadow behind it. "Survival is not just about finding food or shelter. It's about keeping your spirit alive. About helping others when you can, even in small ways. About holding on to who you are, no matter what life throws at you. I've learned that the hard way." David listened intently. "I see that. And it makes me realize, we all have a responsibility to each other. Even when we make mistakes, we have the chance to do better, to help, to guide, to protect." Marcus looked at David, then at Ethan. "And sometimes, the smallest acts can have the biggest impact. Today, I protected your son. But I also learned something: life isn't over, even when it seems like it's lost. There's always a chance to start again, in some way." Ethan's eyes brightened at Marcus's words. "So, you're going to be my hero?" he asked eagerly. Marcus laughed softly, ruffling Ethan's hair. "I'll try my best, Ethan. But remember, you have the power to be brave too. Heroes aren't just people who save others, they're also people who stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." David watched the interaction silently, realizing how much his son admired Marcus. It was a lesson for him as well, one about humility, compassion, and the value of character over wealth or status. He had taught Ethan many lessons about life, but this man, Marcus, was teaching lessons that money could never buy. Marcus glanced at the window, the sun now low on the horizon, painting the room in a warm golden glow. He knew he could not stay here forever, the streets called him, as harsh and unforgiving as they were. But for this moment, he felt a connection, a sense of belonging he had not felt in years. It was fragile, but it was real. "I should be going soon," Marcus said softly. "But I will come back. I promise." "For Ethan." Ethan jumped up and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Marcus. You're the best." Marcus hugged him back gently. "Take care of yourself, Ethan. Be brave, always." David extended his hand again, and this time Marcus shook it firmly, a silent acknowledgement of the past, the present, and the possibility of a better future. "Thank you for trusting me," Marcus said. David nodded, a hint of emotion in his eyes. "Thank you for reminding me what's important." As Marcus walked toward the door, he felt a strange mix of emotions: shock, nostalgia, hope, and cautious optimism. He had faced his past in ways he had not anticipated, and he had found a connection that was unexpected but meaningful. Ethan ran to the door with him, waving. "See you soon, Marcus." Marcus waved back, stepping out into the streets once more. The city greeted him with the familiar sounds of traffic, footsteps, and distant voices, but he did not feel the loneliness he usually did. Today had reminded him that even in a harsh world, courage, kindness, and honesty could create moments of light, even for someone like him. He walked on, knowing that this encounter was only the beginning, that the past could not be erased, but that the future was still unwritten. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus allowed himself to hope. Days passed since the afternoon in the park, but Marcus could not shake the thoughts of Ethan and his father from his mind. He had returned to his usual routines, wandering the streets, finding scraps to eat, and sleeping wherever he could, but the memory of the boy's bright eyes and innocent smile stayed with him. For the first time in years, he felt that his life could have purpose beyond survival, that he could make a difference, no matter how small. The following morning, Marcus decided to return to Ethan's neighborhood. He had told the boy he would come back, and he intended to keep his word. Walking down the familiar streets, he noticed the same neat houses, gardens carefully tended, and neighbors going about their morning routines. Despite the differences between this world and the one he had known for so long, Marcus felt a strange sense of belonging. He was nervous, unsure how David Thompson would receive him again, but he reminded himself that it was for Ethan's sake. When he arrived, Ethan ran to greet him, his small legs carrying him faster than Marcus expected. "Marcus! You came," the boy exclaimed, throwing his arms around him. Marcus laughed softly, returning the hug. "I said I would, didn't I?" Ethan beamed. "Yeah, and I'm so glad. Come on, I want to show you something." He grabbed Marcus's hand and led him to the backyard, where a small treehouse stood, built with care and painted bright blue. It was Ethan's pride and joy, and he wanted to share it with someone who had proven himself trustworthy. As Marcus climbed the ladder into the treehouse, he noticed Ethan's excitement. "You built all this?" he asked, looking around. Ethan nodded. "My dad helped a little, but mostly me. I want it to be my own place, my safe place. And now, you can come here too." Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth that he had not felt in a long time. The treehouse was a symbol, not just of safety, but of trust and friendship. It was a small world where Ethan could feel secure, and Marcus could be someone important in the boy's life. For the next few hours, Marcus and Ethan played games, told stories, and laughed together. It was a rare moment of joy for Marcus, a reminder that life could still hold happiness, even in unexpected ways. But just as the afternoon sun began to dip low, casting long shadows across the yard, the air shifted. From across the street, Marcus noticed a group of older boys approaching. Their posture was aggressive, and their expressions carried the same cruelty Marcus had seen in the park. His instincts kicked in immediately. "Ethan," he said quietly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Stay here. I'll handle this." Ethan's eyes widened. "Marcus, they're bigger than us." "I know," Marcus replied calmly. "But size doesn't always mean strength. Stay here, and don't run." The older boys reached the yard and sneered. "Hey kid, thought we'd drop by and finish what we started," one of them said, his voice full of mockery. Marcus stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow over the group. "I said leave him alone," he said firmly. His voice carried the same quiet authority that had made the bullies in the park back off. The leader of the group laughed, stepping closer. "And who are you supposed to be? Some kind of hero?" Marcus did not answer immediately. He studied them carefully, noting their movements, their confidence, their weaknesses. Then he spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "I'm someone who doesn't let bullies hurt children. And if you take one more step toward him, you'll regret it." For a moment, there was silence. The older boys were uncertain, sensing the strength and courage in Marcus's eyes. But the leader pushed forward, attempting to intimidate him. Marcus stood his ground, his presence steady and unyielding. Suddenly, he moved with swift precision, not to harm, but to block and redirect the boys' movements. They stumbled and scrambled, surprised by the skill and calmness of a man who had nothing to lose but everything to protect. Marcus's actions were confident and controlled, enough to make the bullies retreat. One by one, they backed away, muttering threats but clearly defeated. Ethan ran to Marcus, his small hands gripping his coat. "You did it. You saved me again." Marcus knelt down to Ethan's level, smiling. "Remember what I told you, Ethan. Being brave isn't about fighting. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's scary." Today, they learned that. "And you were brave just by trusting me and staying strong." Ethan's eyes shone. "I want to be like you, Marcus." Marcus ruffled his hair gently. "You will be. And one day, you'll be someone others can look up to. Just remember, courage and kindness go hand in hand." After the bullies finally left, Marcus stayed with Ethan for a while longer, making sure the boy was calm and safe. He noticed the neighborhood slowly quieting down, the sun setting behind the trees, painting the sky with soft colors of orange and pink. It was a moment of peace, a reward for the courage and quick thinking that had kept Ethan safe. Later, when David came home from work, he found Marcus and Ethan sitting in the treehouse, talking quietly. He watched them for a moment, noticing the bond that had formed in such a short time. There was admiration in Ethan's eyes, trust and respect in Marcus's, and a sense of relief in David's own heart. "Marcus," David said softly, "I see the connection you have with my son. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for him. And for me, too, in a way." Marcus looked at David, his expression calm. "I'm not here for thanks, sir. I'm here to make sure Ethan grows up knowing that someone cares, that someone will protect him when needed." David nodded slowly, understanding the depth of Marcus's words. "You're teaching him lessons I cannot always teach him. Lessons about courage, integrity, and compassion. And I am grateful for that." Ethan, sensing the seriousness of the moment, looked between the two men. "Dad, Marcus is the best. He saved me, and he teaches me things I never knew." David smiled, a mixture of pride and humility in his expression. "I can see that, Ethan. And I'm proud that you have someone like Marcus in your life." As the evening continued, Marcus realized that his bond with Ethan was growing stronger with each passing moment. The boy's trust was a gift, one that he intended to honor. And even though the past with David Thompson was complicated, there was a chance now to build something positive, something meaningful. Later, as Marcus left the house to return to his own life on the streets, he felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. He walked through the quiet city streets, reflecting on the events of the day. Protecting Ethan had reminded him of his own strength, of the lessons life had taught him, and of the possibility that, despite everything, life could still offer moments of connection and hope. Marcus knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and dangers. But for now, he felt ready to face them, knowing that he was not alone in spirit. Ethan's gratitude, David's cautious trust, and his own determination created a fragile but real sense of hope. As he settled in a quiet corner for the night, Marcus looked up at the stars, allowing himself a small smile. He had saved a child, forged a new bond, and begun a journey that might one day lead to more than survival. And for the first time in a long time, he believed that the future held promise not just for him, but for the boy he had come to care for deeply. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Marcus was ready. And with Ethan's trust and friendship, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that courage, kindness, and integrity could still make a difference in a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. The morning sun shone gently over the quiet neighborhood, casting a warm light on the trees and houses. Marcus had arrived early, as he often did, walking the familiar streets with a sense of calm determination. He had promised Ethan that he would visit, and he intended to keep that promise. Today felt different, though. There was a feeling in the air, a subtle tension that suggested something important was about to happen. Ethan was waiting at the gate, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Marcus! You're here," he called, running to meet him. His small hands grabbed Marcus's arm. "Come on. Dad says we can do something special today." Marcus smiled, ruffling Ethan's hair. "Special, huh? Well, I'm ready. Lead the way." They walked together to the backyard, where David was already waiting. He had a small folder in his hand, which Marcus guessed contained some kind of plan or idea. David looked at Marcus and gave a nod of acknowledgement. There was a quiet respect in his eyes now, a recognition of the man who had changed his son's day and perhaps his own life in ways he could not have anticipated. "Marcus," David began, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and about the way you've helped Ethan. I want to do more than just thank you. I want to offer you a chance to rebuild, if you're willing. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. He had faced offers before, jobs that promised stability, housing, and a chance at a normal life, but he had always declined. Independence, freedom, and living by his own rules mattered more to him than comfort. Yet, there was something in David's tone, a sincerity he could not ignore. "I appreciate that," Marcus said carefully, "but I've learned to live my own way. I don't need a house or a job to feel like I matter. I have my purpose, and that's enough." David nodded slowly, understanding. "I respect that. And I only want to offer it because I know your life has been difficult. But what matters most is your connection with Ethan. And I hope that can continue, no matter what choices you make." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Marcus, you're not leaving, are you?" Marcus chuckled softly. "No, Ethan. I'm not leaving. I'll visit and teach you what I can, just like I promised." The three of them spent the morning together, playing simple games, telling stories, and sharing small lessons. Marcus taught Ethan how to solve problems calmly, how to stay brave even when afraid, and how kindness could be stronger than force. Ethan listened carefully, absorbing each lesson as if it were a treasure. As the day progressed, Marcus noticed a subtle change in David. The man seemed less rigid, less concerned with appearances, and more focused on what truly mattered, his son's happiness and the positive influence Marcus had on him. It was a humbling sight, and Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing he had helped in a small way to bring about that change. In the afternoon, David suggested they take a walk to the park. Marcus agreed, sensing that the fresh air and open space would be good for Ethan. As they walked, they passed familiar streets, playgrounds, and small shops. Children played in the distance, laughter filling the air. Marcus felt a strange mix of nostalgia and hope. The streets had once been harsh and unforgiving, but now they felt full of possibility. At the park, Marcus noticed a group of children playing soccer. Ethan ran toward them eagerly, wanting to join in. Marcus watched, smiling, as the boy's confidence grew. He could see the transformation happening, the lessons of courage and kindness taking root in the child's heart. David approached Marcus quietly. "You've done something remarkable here," he said softly. "Ethan looks up to you in a way I can't explain. You've given him more than just protection, you've given him guidance, courage, and trust." Marcus nodded. "That's all I could hope for. He deserves to know someone cares, that someone will be there for him when needed. That's more important than anything else." They sat on a bench nearby, watching Ethan play. Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from the streets, through hardship, to this moment of connection and purpose. He had faced danger, loneliness, and disappointment, yet he had never lost his sense of integrity or his willingness to help those in need. And now, he was witnessing the reward of those choices in the joy and growth of a child. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the park, Ethan ran back to Marcus, panting but smiling. "Marcus! Look what I did! I scored a goal!" Marcus laughed, lifting Ethan off the ground in a gentle hug. "That's wonderful, Ethan. I'm proud of you. You faced your fear and gave it your best. That's what matters." David watched silently, feeling a surge of gratitude and admiration. He realized that Marcus had become more than a protector, he was a mentor, a role model, and a friend. And for that, he was deeply thankful. As the evening approached, they walked back to the house together. Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment he had not known in years. This bond with Ethan was different from anything he had experienced before. It was built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. And it was a reminder that even in a world that often seemed unfair, kindness and courage could make a lasting impact. Before leaving for the night, Marcus knelt down to Ethan. "Remember, you're stronger than you think. Always stand up for what's right, be kind to others, and never forget the lessons you've learned. And I'll be back, to help you whenever you need me." Ethan hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Marcus. You're the best." Marcus smiled, a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the sun. "Take care, Ethan. Be brave, always." David extended his hand once more, a silent acknowledgement of respect and understanding. Marcus shook it firmly, a gesture that bridged the gap between their past and present. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. David nodded. "Thank you for everything." As Marcus walked back into the streets, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The city, with all its noise, challenges, and struggles, no longer seemed entirely hostile. There were moments of connection, of hope, of change, and Marcus knew that he had played a role in creating those moments. He walked through the quiet streets, reflecting on the events of the day. He had protected a child, built trust, and witnessed the growth of courage and character. He had confronted the past, faced his memories, and found a way to move forward without bitterness. And most importantly, he had found a sense of belonging, however fragile, in the life of a young boy and his family. As night fell, Marcus settled in a familiar corner for the night, looking up at the stars above. He allowed himself a small, contented smile. The journey had not been easy, and the road ahead would still have challenges, but he had learned that courage, kindness, and integrity could create moments of light in even the darkest places. For the first time in a long time, Marcus believed that life held promise. He had discovered that helping others, standing up for what was right, and forming meaningful connections could bring fulfillment greater than any comfort or wealth. And with Ethan's trust, David's respect, and his own determination, he knew that the future, while uncertain, was filled with hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Marcus would face them as he always had, with courage, heart, and a sense of purpose. But tonight, he could rest knowing that he had made a difference, that he had been a guiding force in a young boy's life, and that he had begun to rebuild his own in ways that mattered more than anything else. And as he drifted into sleep beneath the quiet glow of the city lights, Marcus allowed himself to dream not of wealth or comfort, but of the lasting impact of kindness, bravery, and connection. For him, that was the greatest reward of all.